Hello, Renee here. Welcome or welcome back. This time we are doing Calla Lillies in my little sketchbook here. Just setting up the yellow base, which I come back to later. Not to jump right into this or anything. I edited this video for like succinctability, if that's a real word. And I'm kind of regretting it now that I'm doing the voiceover. Just being totally upfront. Because how am I supposed to jump around at the same time the video is being succinct? You know what I mean? So I'm just going to admit it up front. I'm all over the place, all right? And I've had this video for weeks now, and I just had to do the voiceover. I'm sorry. I want it to be great, and I'm finding my way and my voice and what my style is going to be, and I'm like, I don't even know anymore. Anyway, so I will say here, this yellow, so with Calla Lillies, like, they have this beautiful color that comes through in the stalks, and I think showing their beauty, but you know, I am kind of biased. And the way I wanted to do that was to have this bright yellow underneath, so you can see it there. I had to really go sort of hard with it. I found it was just the way I was doing it previously just wasn't going to work. So I did a big, huge, not huge, but bright yellow layer underneath to pull up later. And I think I achieved it. I mean, for a scrapbook, this isn't arched paper. This isn't cotton. This isn't even cotton paper. It's the Strathmore 500 sketchbook. I like it for its size, but I'm adapting to its differences, we'll just say, without completely bashing a company. That was kind of rude. Anyway, I live in a very dry climate. I've said this before. This synthetic ox gall, even with this in February, with the forced air going, it's not enough, which is crazy. And you can see how much I put in there, but it's still crazy. So going through, I was like, okay, I want to darken up this hooker's green a little bit for the sides of the stalk, because when it comes to the flower is honestly, it's pretty simple because they are white. Most of the time was spent doing these stalks. So I needed to take the edges and darken them and pull it through. So you can see here I'm using that darkened hooker's green and just going along the sides, like really faintly, well, fairly faintly. I don't have to worry about it that much. And then going over afterwards with clean water and pulling it towards the center from either side to give it that roundness that obviously they are. And I think it worked, but I am really curious. I'd like, one day, what am I going to do pulling this onto some good paper? I'd like to think so. But you can see there, it's just pulling it from the edges and creating that cylinder. And then you really don't need a lot of the pigment. So I'm getting rid of a lot of it just to move it around and trying to do it fairly quickly because, like I said, it's so dry in my apartment right now. It's insane how dry it is and all the things I'm trying to do to like make it better. And here's some just really, really watered down with the yellow. And I'm not worried about the green being in there because there is obviously some natural green as it coming towards the flower in that yellow area. And you'll see later how I did that on the larger one that's supposed to be closer to the viewer on the left there. It's a lot more space to show how to get that yellowy green in there. And just going through now with like just the faintest amount of pigment to do those sides and just darken along the sides. And my original video had like all of them, like all three of the stalks, and I was like, yeah, that's too much. Nobody wants to see this over and over and over again. And like I said, I'm still getting my voice and my style on here and what works. So in this one, I was like, okay, just do it smaller sections. And let me know what you guys like to see too, because I honestly don't know, you know? If it was up to me, I'd have so much being shown right now, and you guys don't care. See how little amount of pigment I grabbed there? That's how much doing the final sides really is. Like just darkening those shadows and moving it around and to the leaf, and then going through with a clean damp brush and pulling up the highlights in the middle of that stalk. And here I'm kind of doing the same thing that was in the stalk, but with all green, creating those shadows underneath the folds. It was hard with the reason why I really like Hooker's green is it's so bright, and in watercolor it picks up a lot of light. But at the same time, I found on here, because there's so much white on this page, it almost started to look kind of garish. So I darkened it with that, the darker mix that I used, and then just going to see that looks so much better doing the sides like that. I mean, it looks better, right? And just a little bit more of that raw umber in there to darken it down. And you'll see there too that I have a thicker mix and then one that's a lot more watery. And then I could glaze with the one that's more watery. So this is where I'm going to be using that water to pull out the shadows that I put in on the sides with the darker one. And it's part of what I love about art is just creating these layers. And like I said, here is showing what I was saying about going in with the more watery mix, pulling out that color that's on the side that creates the shadow, or like with here, going in with the water first, and you'll see me move it around and create that shadow that would be naturally underneath the sides of the leaf, which, by the way, when I went back to this later, I was able to see that this leaf I'm working on here, I should have brought it down further on the other side of that flower to extend it a little bit more. And I missed that opportunity. And that's just one of those things that sometimes you see when you're able to come back the next day or the next week, or in this case, I think I opened up the sketchbook to do something else. And I was like, oh, well, that was a missed opportunity. It was right there, Renee. You could have grabbed it, but nope, you didn't. All right. And here is what I was saying earlier, really showing, see that tiny, tiny, tiny little bit of pigment that I grabbed there to move around. Having that area of the flower come down towards the stalk, being more green at the base. Which, by the way, I learned whenever I was doing this, that the flower that we see, what we think is the flower on a calla lily, isn't actually the flower. Which I was like, wait, what? That's the prettiest part. That's the part we all look at. Actually, it's a leaf. The white part that we look at as a flower is actually a leaf, and it's protecting on the inside at the base of that what's called a spadix, which is another thing I learned. Spadix, sorry. At the base of what will future be an orange part that I do, there's a flower around that, and that's the actual flower, really down in there, which I guess I never really looked inside, because yeah, there's an actual flower inside, and that's the flower. So the part that I'm doing now is actually another leaf. It's cool. I love this stuff. And what I'm doing here, it's such a really, really watered down mix of that yellow, and pulling out the highlights with a clean damp brush and being very careful with it, because actually with this yellow you don't have to be so careful with it, but what is the careful part is wanting to make sure that you're sticking within that flower. And I wasn't worried about the pencil marks on this one. I really wasn't worried about it, because like I said, it's a sketchbook. And full disclosure, I had planned on it being a line and wash with some ink, and I tried at the end and I didn't really like it, so I just kept it with the pencil. And again, if I were to do something in the future on some good paper, that's how you learn, is in your sketchbook, right? And here I am going just making that greener part where it's like more yellow at the top and blowing through with the green. And I'm also at the time I'm waiting for a bit of that the watery mix on the flowers to dry a little bit. You can see it's still kind of glossy, which of course the stuff dries when I don't want it to dry fast, but when I do want it to dry faster, it doesn't. Because yeah, thank you. That's just, you know, that's just being me. So here I have to, okay, so in this part it's going through and doing where there would be more of a shadow. I'm just creating a little bit more, but then making sure that where there's highlights, I'm picking up some of that pigment and pulling it away. And it's a lot more visible on the smaller one, like the one in the middle. There's more fold. So like on the inside, there would be a little bit more pigment in there because it's more of a shadow. And then the shadows, you're picking up the color of the leaves, which aren't actually a flower, they're a leaf. Weird. I'm just going to call it a flower. That's it. And going through and just doing the highlights and everything. And here, that spadix. Watch this. Boom. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love watercolor. And you'll see, I will show how I have the reflection of that orange in the rest of the flower here. Boom. There we go. So it's taking just a little bit of water on the brush, like super, super just damp, and watch this. Just barely touching that orange. See it bleeding out a little bit? And as I'm doing the rest of the water, moving it around, I'll go back in now. Oh, wait, it's coming. It's coming. Now, there. And moving it around into that water that I put on the page. And that's how you have the reflection. And it's a little bit of information on the calla lily. I don't know what other flowers to do here, by the way. If you have suggestions for other flowers to me do in this manner, let me know, because I couldn't find a lot of lore around the calla lily, which is weird. But I did like how it's used as a male and female union. I was like, that is something I didn't know, and I love that double gendered, or no gender, but specifically double gender attitude. Leave it at that. And I wasn't too sure here whether but leaving the back white. And I wish I did, to be honest. I really wish I did. Because I went in, sometimes I think I do things just because I'm really tactile and I want to keep going on with moving the brush around and using the pigment, and I end up just doing too much. Like, look, it's too much. And here, whenever I'm doing all this, it's like, well, it hasn't dried yet. It'll dry lighter. No, I don't like it. I don't. It's okay. Like, it's okay. But I really wish that I hadn't. And then here I'm going in, making it darker in what would be like the far corner. So like all this stuff makes sense, like if you were doing something else. But I'm not feeling it in this one. I'm really not. And you can see there I did the ink wash over top of it, but this is what it was in the end. And it's not bad. I do like it. And you can see all the layers I did in the green, getting that nice and dark and glossy, and the stalks. And yeah, thanks guys. Please subscribe, come back, like, do all the things. Thank you.